Hello there! So, you would like to make and potentially publish your first game. I would like to help out with that. My brand's name is Plush Monster, and I started publishing games in 2025 on itch.io. In this process, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way that made me wish there was a video just like this out there. The videos I could find fail to cover a lot of important aspects in this process and often don't address how to actually finish a game and all the little steps and preparations you will have to go through. So, in this video, I'm going to cover the shown topics, and I made sure to provide timestamps for your convenience. I also want to emphasize that all of this is just a recommendation and that you should go for what works best for you. On top of that, if you have any advice or recommendations to share, I would love to read your comments. First, we are going to talk about skills. This means I will help you evaluate your own skill set when it comes to game development. The point of that is to see where your strengths and interests lie, and it will also help with picking an engine that suits you. Right after that, I will cover what kind of skill set fits certain engines and certain game genres. This is just a recommendation of some engines I have used in the past, as well as which genre of game could work well for you. In the following, I will address how you can balance out lacking skills in areas such as art, sound design, and even programming with minimum effort to give you an easier starting point. After all of that preparation is done, I get to the nitty gritty. I start off with how to start getting into an engine first. Then I will show you how to organize your time and energy to work out a game concept, and finally some advice on how to actually finish it. The distribution section is only relevant if you want to distribute your game on a platform like, for example, itch.io. Of course, you can also just make a game for funsies, for yourself, for your own private fun. This is supposed to be enjoyable, this is supposed to be fun. You don't have to become a business or anything like that. And going into it right at the start with that mindset can just put a lot of pressure on you. So I just wanted to make sure to also address that. So in the last section, I will add some thoughts on the entire topic. I'm just gonna go put the script aside and just say some thoughts about everything. Okay, so let's get started with the skill set section. The reason why I wanted to cover this is because I actually worked on multiple games over multiple years and only was able to publish a game when I found out how to make a dress-up game. Nowadays, I have moved on to visual novels and RPGs, so don't worry about getting stuck on one genre. When it comes to games, there are a lot of skills that can be helpful, including the ones listed on screen. However, when it comes to choosing your first engine and genre, I found that specifically art, writing, and programming make the biggest difference. I, for example, went to art school and never really got to build any programming skills. But I built a lot of skill in art and sometimes wrote stories as a hobby. Based on this, the best choice for my first game would have been a dress up game, visual novel, or simply a text based game. Twine, RenPy, and Micro.io are great options for making a game like this if you have a similar skill set. Again, those are just options that I have used and that have worked well for me, and I can recommend them definitely for beginners. I'm still fresh to game development, and it's been working really great for me. And they're also all free to use. Very important point. Everything I'm recommending here is, as far as I know, free to use, free to download. So let's start with Twine. Twine is simple to use, great for multiple choice text-based games, and offers the option to add imagery and sound effects as well, but it's not a must. Games made with Twine are usually short and run in the browser. You don't need to know programming and only need to use some scripting if you want to add imagery, sound, and stuff like that. RenPy, on the other hand, is a beginner-friendly visual novel engine that also utilizes scripting instead of programming languages. I was able to follow a few YouTube tutorials. They have their own channel over here, which is very practical, and make my first visual novel for a game jam on itch.io. It already has a menu, saving system, and all that stuff integrated, so you don't need to worry about somehow programming that stuff in, which is something that in some engines you would have to do. MyCario is a website that turns a PSD file into a dress up game that can only be played on the website. Now, little side note here. The reason why I'm saying that a dress up game is great for people who just have a lot of experience in art and not really in programming and all of that is because you literally just need to make an art file, watch some tutorials online, and it will show you already some basics about how to use scripting to make certain functions work. And that will give you a good basis for other engines you may use in the future. That is why it was easier for me to move from making a game for MyCario, a dress-up game, to making games in RenPy, to using scripting in Twine. So I don't know how dress-up games are seen in the gaming scene, but I just wanted to throw that in. Anyway, so this means that you can create an art file with your art program of choice, follow some tutorials to get the folders and scripting right, export it as a PSD, or use a website that turns your file into a PSD file and just upload it. After it has been approved, it becomes playable on the site. So they do have some rules on their site, and some people will check if your game fits the rules, if you're breaking the rules, and if you don't break the rules, you will get an email, it will get approved, may take a few days, and it's going to be on a website, but you also need an account to upload a game there. Because I have some experience publishing games with all three of these engines, I am working on videos that show you exactly how to make your very first game in each of these three. Now, what if you are more interested and or skilled in programming? And with that, I don't just mean programming itself, but a keen understanding of how engines work. Perhaps you are a quick learner and dislike the limits that visual novel engines or even RPG Maker engines have put in place. You may find yourself more interested in creating something that offers unique mechanics completely put together by you. This offers you great freedom in what kind of genre your game falls into. Maybe you even combine multiple genres in an out-of-the-box way. However, if you lack the skills in art, you can still make a game with free assets available online. Of course, that also counts for music and sound effects and all that kind of stuff. I personally have to admit that this is not my strong suit, but I still try to pick out two recommendations for this category. The first one being Godot. When I was able to make a tutorial game with this engine, I almost lost my mind trying to figure out an error message that didn't make sense because I followed the tutorial very closely. So it turned out that because of an update, you have to write some stuff slightly differently or else it won't work. Since then, I haven't really touched the engine much, so that's just something to keep in mind when following tutorials. They're not always up to date with the version, and there could be some stuff that you have to do slightly differently. Anyway, so Godot can be used for 2D and 3D games, and you can pretty much create anything with it. Like, I have seen people make 3D adventure games, 2D jump and run games, and all that kind of stuff. However, if your game idea, for example, goes very much in the RPG direction, I would not recommend this one. Or at least not for beginners, because as a beginner, you really don't want to spend hours trying to create a menu or inventory from scratch when you could just use an RPG Maker engine instead that already has all of that stuff pre-made. So yes, Godot is great when it comes to freedom, but if there's a lot of systems that you need for your game that should already be in place, like a menu, like an inventory and all of that, it will take a lot of time to make that with Godot, which some people may really want to do that. They may really want to do everything by themselves. But as a beginner for that kind of game, like for example, an RPG, I really recommend using an engine that is specifically for that genre. All right. The second recommendation I noted is Game Maker. Now, I don't know what its current reputation is, so let me know if this is a bad pick, like full honesty. I personally was able to make a small game with this engine on my sister's laptop when I was maybe 12 or 13. I remember making the sprites for the enemies, main character, and weapons right inside the engine itself, and just overall having fun with it. So I would say that's beginner friendly and that it has some nice perks. Of course, this also comes with its issues, which led to me rage quitting because for some reason the player character would not walk to the left. I don't know if there was again the problem with like the tutorial version of the engine and the version I was using. I don't know. But again, programming is definitely not my strong suit. So if you have other recommendation for this section, please share them in the comments. I think it would be really helpful for everyone who's watching. All right, the last engine I would like to cover is rather a list of engines that can be summarized as RPG Maker. There are many different versions of the classic 2D RPG Maker available on Steam. However, they are not available for free, and the price can vary from a few bucks to AAA game prices. On the other hand, there is the RPG Paper Maker engine, which uses a similar system but lets you create a 2.5D world. This one is available for free, but if you want to sell your game for money, you have to buy a license first. I think it's around 70, and some RPG Maker engines also cost like 70, so yeah, it is comparable. Now, I have to note that making an RPG as your first game can be very difficult due to the sheer scale. Creating a big story with lots of characters and regions would be a very large project. Because of this, I'm currently brainstorming some game concepts that would be doable as a short RPG. If you would like to see a video covering this topic, let me know in the comments below. Now, a little side note right here. Before I started publishing games, I was actually working on RPGs with RPG Maker and later on RPG Paper Maker as my first games, but it always was too big. Even if I tried to make it smaller, it ended up to be just way too much work for one person, especially a beginner. And that's also a big reason why I want to make this video, because it really made me frustrated with making games and almost made me quit, honestly. So I don't want other people to experience this and rather have this build up in skill. Like, start small, start with something that fits your skill set, and start with ideas that are small game concepts. And I'm not saying don't make big games. I'm saying build the skill first and then tackle your big project. Like, in the background, you can be still working on your big project, like on the concepts and stuff like that. Like, I think all of us have like some grand ideas. I'm currently moving on to my bigger ideas after some smaller projects, but that's just something I wanted to add to this. Okay, back to the script. The great benefit of these engines is that you already have pre-made sprites, functioning menus, and inventory, and you don't really need to know how to program and can just use pre-made commands. The downside is that if you want to do anything out of the box, you will run into walls. It has these limitations because of that as well. Plugins can help with that, but only if they cover your needs, function as supposed to, and are explained in a way that is easy to understand for everyone, and that's not always the case. The plugin situation is definitely much better with RPG Maker than RPG Paper Maker. At least that's my experience personally. Like, with RPG Maker, I remember I wanted to use this plugin because I'm much more skilled in art, right, than other ways. But I also first had to learn how to make pixel art, and I was struggling with that a lot in the beginning. So I was like, hey, is there a plugin or something like that that I can use to put artworks in the fight scenes instead, like just like a detailed artwork of a character instead of this pixelated little fighting sprite. And there was actually a plugin for that, and it worked perfectly, and I was really happy with it. And the process was very simple of implementing that. It just worked. But with RPG Paper Maker, I have been battling so many plugins. Like, I've been thinking about making videos about the plugins, but the problem is I can't make a video about it until I figure it out. And especially the descriptions, it's just At least in most cases, it's very hard to follow. Lots of stuff is not really explained. And that's why when I finally figure a plugin out, I will definitely make a video about it because I feel like it's necessary. When comparing the two, I would say that RPG Maker is better for you if a large amount of assets and plugins available online is very important to you and you don't mind or even prefer the 2D view. RPG Paper Maker, on the other hand, can be amazing for creating interesting 2.5D worlds, and I'm currently working on putting more tutorials and assets out there to make this engine more accessible for everyone. So I really love RPG Paper Maker, but I wanted to make sure to really give you just the objective information on both of these. But at the same time, because I'm working a lot with RPG Paper Maker and there aren't many tutorials online, there aren't many assets online, and I have been working on assets for my own game projects. And I had to figure a lot of stuff out on my own. I just thought, hey, what if I put out some tutorials? Hey, what if I would just upload some of my assets for free that I've made anyway? Maybe I never finished the RPG, right? But then at least my assets could be out there. At least the experience I got from all this could be out there and maybe help someone. That's why I started putting free asset packs on my Ko-fi page, and I'm uploading some on itch.io as well. Like, it's all free so far. I don't know if I'll make ones that cost money later on. I don't really have a plan specifically, right? But I just want it to be more accessible, and it's been a very positive experience so far. Right, but I just wanted to be very upfront with all of this. Like, I'm sure that for some people, RPG Maker is better, and for some people, RPG Paper Maker may be better, or you really want to use it because you want these almost paper-like visuals and stuff like that. But what about those other skills I listed previously? Well, they definitely come in handy in game development, but aren't a necessity. So if you have any of these, it can make a great addition to your game. But if you don't need to worry about learning them right now. Maybe later, or like later on, if you keep making games, you team up with someone who, for example, is really good in music or really good in art or really good in programming or whatever, right? But right now, as a beginner, you shouldn't worry about those things. And that is why I want to talk about how to balance out your weaknesses. So, in the beginning, you don't need to do everything yourself. That's a very important point. Like on itch.io, I joined this game jam and I read like through the rules of itch.io, and it made it sound very much like you're not allowed to use assets from other people in your games. Like, you need to actually make everything yourself. So a lot of time, like, of this 1 week in this game jam, like the Renpai game I made was like Yandere of the Forest is what it's called. I made every sound effect myself at home, and I spent so much time on that. It did not turn out good. It did not turn out good. It took so much time away from like the other aspects of the game. And if I would have known that it's okay to use like music that was and sound effects that was made by other people, that would have done that. But at the same time, like, it's confusing because it's like you're supposed to only make stuff in that 1 week. So if I use music and stuff that was created before that week, am I even allowed to use that? Like, I'm still a bit confused about that, but I'm not joining game jams right now. But I just wanted to put that out there. Also, don't make your first game as a game jam game. Do that later when you have more experience. When it comes to art, music, and sound effects, you can find many free-to-use assets online. Like, you can even find some on itch.io. There are also other websites where you can find this kind of stuff, right? You just need to check out, like, what are you allowed to use it for, right? Some will be like you're free to use it, but not for commercial purpose. So, for example, if a music site like the one that I like to use says that, then that means you're not allowed to sell a game that uses these assets for money, but you can put it out there for free. So always pay attention to stuff like that. But continuing with the script, you don't even need to learn programming. As I said, there are a lot of engines like Twine or RenPy that use scripting, which is much easier to understand, and that's also what you do in Micro.io with the dress-up games. And honestly, you can just copy and paste most stuff. So that's something I do in Twine. Like I have these few lines of script and of the scripting method. I also really hope that I'm using the right terminology here because I'm still kind of fresh here, right, with game development. So correct me in the comments if I use the wrong terminology, okay? But what I wanted to say is I have these lines that, for example, work for music and sound effects and imagery, and I don't write it every time. I just found it out through like online sources, like how to write this. I put it in a game and I just copy and paste it wherever I need an image shown or a sound played or whatever, right? So that's also something you can do in RenPy pretty much and other places like that. So you don't need to figure out anything very complicated, and just this copy and pasting can really save your life. And in the engines like RPG Maker, you get pre-made events that you can simply choose and place on the map. So this means you hit the event option and then you click on a spot on the map, and you can choose from a list of events. Like for example, you want there to be a character standing, and when you talk to them they give you like a conversation box. Maybe there's even an image shown with it. Like I have a video that covers that in RPG Paper Maker, by the way. But if you want to do that, there are very simple options right there that you can just click on, write in the text, go back into the game, interact with that sprite, and then the text will be shown. So that makes it really easy. All right, the last point here that came to my mind is writing. What should someone do if they can't write a story and deep characters? And again, I'm not talking about learning the new skill, but as a beginner in your first game, without learning new skills, what can you do to fill these holes, basically? And it made me think of Godot and how you can just make a game that is entirely focused on fun mechanics instead of some story. You could make a jump and run game where the hero needs to save someone taken hostage by the final boss, and people will mostly care about the jump and run experience instead of the story. You could even just put a twist on some common trope and make it much more interesting that way. Like you could make a twist like, oh, you were the villain actually all along, or I don't know, the princess is actually the final boss because of some reason. Like she is awoken and now she wants to take over the world, or I don't know. Like just a simple twist like that in a game that is not really focused on story can already just make the entire experience way cooler, honestly. Okay, of course, you can also take the time and effort to learn these skills instead, but that shouldn't be your focus for your very first game, and works way better if you learn by making games. Scripting can be your first step to understanding programming languages. Finding the right sprites and implementing them into your game gives you a basic understanding of what is needed for a sprite to work and look good. Putting together a soundtrack that is a combination of some sound effects and ambience you found online teaches you the basics of how to put a soundtrack together for your game. Making a game that barely has a story but a cool base concept can lead to small plot and character ideas that will become larger over time. So you don't need to worry about being stuck in that position like, oh, but if I focus on my skill where I'm best at, that means that I'm not learning anything else. No, absolutely not. Like, as I said, I started out with RPG Maker, then went to RPG Paper Maker, and then I started making dress-up games with Micro.io, and I never got to really understand scripting or programming or anything for RPG Maker. So when I made this game for Micro.io, I had to understand how does it turn your art file into a game, and you need to have a certain system of how you do your folders and layers, and they have to have these specific names that assign them to a function and everything. And that made me understand scripting much better. And I used Twine before that, but I couldn't really deal with it. Like, it's a simple engine, but actually making a game for Mike.io made me better understand how to script in Twine, which then later made me understand how to do stuff in RenPy. And so I went from dress up game to story game, which can also be a visual novel if you include images like in Twine. And then to like full on visual novel with RenPy. And then I got to a point where I even tried out Godot. Now, I'm not good with it, but I think I wouldn't have been able to deal with it at all if I wouldn't at least understand the basics of scripting, right? So it's all a bridge. And also with Cosmic Bliss, as I said before, for this one Game Jam game, I just used pre-made no. For the game jam, I actually recorded everything myself. But then later on for Cosmic Bliss, I found this one website. I don't quite remember what it's called, but I'm probably going to mention it later in the comments. And this one I went to and I got sound effects from, I got ambience from, I got music from. I made sure that I'm allowed to use it, right? And I gave credit to having used the sound effects and everything from that website in the credits. And taking these and then going into a program where you can put the music and sound effects together into one sequence that then plays, that gave me a much better understanding of what I need to do in the future than just straight up starting with making everything myself and starting from zero. It really helps you learn. And it builds confidence, honestly. Now, we're going to the next point. This is going to be the day where you start your engine. So after you have determined which engine fits your current skill set, I recommend taking a day to just try it out. The idea is that you download it and follow a tutorial or multiple tutorials online that show you how to make your very first game. So there are lots of videos online, but it really depends on your engine, how many videos will be available. But often people will be like, hey, watch this video to basically make a tutorial game in this engine. And with that, you can already follow this whole process of making a game in that. And what I often do is I just watch the video at first and I see if I can follow it well before following it while working in the engine. Like, just I will watch it and be like, okay, can I follow what the person is saying? Do I understand what's happening or not? Some people may need to do that, some people may not. I got ADHD, so I gotta be careful with stuff like that, right? But it really helps me personally. And then I watched the tutorial again and I tried out in the engine, and that's basically how I tried out Godot and tested out if it works well for me. The answer is no, but I'm trying. But anyway, what I would say is don't go for your game idea yet. Just use this day to understand the UI and see if the process works for you. Because what can happen is that you absolutely struggle with understanding anything on screen. And that does not mean that you're incapable in any kind of way. That just means that this engine is not working for you, right? Like, or sometimes maybe you just need to watch another tutorial again. Maybe you need to mess around with the engine a little bit. For everyone, the process is a little bit different. But I just wanted to say that it's okay if an engine doesn't work for you. But I think I also wrote that down later in the script. Anyway, let's just continue with the script. I keep going off script. When you finish this mini tutorial game, evaluate your experience. Was it fun? Did it feel rewarding? Or was it incredibly frustrating? If your experience was mostly negative, I recommend taking a break and trying out a different engine on another day. Not every engine works for everyone, and it doesn't mean that game development isn't for you. So that's exactly that point I'm trying to say. Like, when I tried out Godot, I think if that would have been my first engine, I may just have quit because it doesn't work well for me. It works well for a lot of people, but not everything works for everyone, right? So that's an important point to remember. And I'm saying here, take a break, because it's better to not go with that negative energy and frustration into another engine. So I would say really just do something that relaxes you, maybe some gaming or something, and come back to this later on another day with a fresh mind where you really still have all the headspace to do this. That would be my recommendation personally. In the end, if it all worked out, congrats, you just made your first game. Now let's work on something that is entirely your own. And as a little side note, after writing the script, I realized that when I follow tutorials like this, I often still feel lost with the engine afterwards. It's like you follow this engine, you follow this engine's tutorial, and you're like, okay, but now what? Like, your brain doesn't always suck up all the information, actually understands what's going on, but you just click what you see and it's just out of your head the next moment. That can happen. So the moments in which that did not happen for me is when I allowed myself to just mess around with the engine before or after following such a tutorial. Just looking at the options and seeing, oh, hey, what if I try this out? Or what does this menu option do? Can help a lot with getting accustomed to a new engine. And this again has to do with orienting yourself in this UI, in this user interface, in this whole menu, everything that you're just not used to. Your brain just needs to get accustomed to it first. And for everyone, I bet it's a little bit different. Maybe for some people, if you follow a tutorial, that's enough. But for other people, you may need just like a moment for yourself with the engine where you just do random stuff. And then you're like, okay, that's enough, or you hit a wall or something, you don't really know what to do anymore, and then you follow a tutorial. And that could help you actually absorbing the information from the tutorial. So that's what worked or didn't work in my experience, for myself at least. Okay, now let's get to the next part, planning. There are two important pieces to the planning process: time management and concept work. The method that has worked best for me so far is to get some paper or a notebook and spend the first few days on writing down and sketching ideas for my game. At the same time, I make sure to avoid burnout by following a schedule. Personally, I work 1 or 2 hours a day on my games. This may not seem like a lot at first, but believe me, if you just keep going for it and you think, I can do this in one day. So many people make videos like of just making a game in one day. And you push yourself, you work until the middle of the night, then you collapse, and you work on it again the next day. At some point, you don't want to do this anymore, and you may not even finish it. So actually spreading out your time, making sure that you're not overworking yourself, will guarantee or is more likely to lead to you actually finishing it and having a good time, because that's what we also want. We want to have a good time. We want to have fun. We don't need to be businesses or anything like that. So I recommend that you look at your own lifestyle and adjust your planning whenever you notice that it's too much. For example, sometimes I had this phase where I said, okay, today I'm just going to finish this one artwork for my game. But then it turned out that this artwork took like 3 hours or more, and it overworked me. So saying, okay, instead I work 1 or 2 hours a day, and I'm going to spend 1 hour on this artwork for that game, and then the other hour I'm going to spend on something for another game, actually has been working out better. And the artworks, the quality has also gotten better because I'm not as exhausted in the process of making them, right? So this phase can be a lot of fun for me because I use these really large sheets of paper and just allow myself to brainstorm on it until my timer rings. Some projects of mine have dedicated notebooks as well. For example, I have this creature capture game that I'm working on that has its own notebook, but I still sometimes take out the big sheets of paper and just be like, but what about the town design? Oh yeah, let me sketch that out. Oh, how do I make this function or that function? And I just have like these arrows going everywhere. It probably looks a little bit insane to other people. So the goal here is that you combine all of your ideas into a coherent game concept that fits your skill level and engine. This will enable you to create a checklist, which we're going to get into in the next section. So, execution. We're going to make the game. We have the planning, we know our skills, we know our engine. We have an engine that's kind of working at least. Okay, now we get to the checklist. What exactly do I mean with a checklist? For example, I'm currently working on a visual novel called The Reaper Project. Before jumping into developing it with RenPy, I planned the whole game to the point where I could list all of the artworks needed and write the script for the dialogue boxes. So basically, I planned the game on paper, wrote the script on PC, and made a checklist. Since then, I can easily continue working on the game by just opening up the checklist and working on the next point or putting more of the script into the engine. This helps me to pick up wherever I left off easily, even if I took a large break. Anytime I feel lost or exhausted with a project, I also allow myself to spend 15 minutes on brainstorming on paper instead of working for 1 or 2 hours on PC. This actually often leads to great ideas and helps bring back the motivation I lost. I know it seems less productive, but that is another way you can avoid burnout. Something that can happen very easily is that your idea grows too large to handle or already was a bit too big from the start. I experienced this with my visual novel Cosmic Bliss that I made with Twine. I almost completely abandoned the game because of it. So what did I do? I looked at all of the parts of the story, especially the ones I was struggling to write, and I realized that maybe it would be best to just exclude them and focus on the parts that I actually feel like writing. Of course, I still had to make sure that everything made sense, but in the end, I'm glad that I made this choice. Before it was completely finished, I also allowed myself to publish it in early access and got very positive responses. This actually motivated me to keep going and to fully publish the game some months later. Oftentimes, perfectionism is the enemy. I recommend going for good enough. Finish this artwork, but it could be better. Good enough. Not sure if all the sound effects are perfectly timed and on the same level of volume. Good enough. You can always update the game after finishing and potentially publishing it if you still feel like polishing some aspects like these. But you should definitely not ignore anything game-breaking. So here I just want to say that with Cosmic Bliss, I had many of these moments. I was like, oh, but the style of this artwork is slightly different than this one, or this artwork is better than that one, so I need to heighten the quality of the other artwork, and oh, but this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to keep telling myself, no, it's good enough. And now that I have finished the game, I gotta admit, I'm looking back at those parts and they seem so much smaller and honestly irrelevant. And I don't have a desire anymore I didn't have the desire since I published it to really go back and change anything about that, remake an artwork or anything like that. No, really, it's just that in the process, those things can seem much bigger, like much more important. Like, oh, but if this isn't perfect, then oh no, but what are players gonna think or whatever, right? Nah. So now that we covered how to avoid burnout and deal with perfectionism, there are a few other points worth mentioning. So I would say allow yourself to rewatch tutorials whenever you feel lost. So something I kept thinking while I was working on my games, like I just watched a tutorial about this. Why can't I do this yet? It's fine and normal to rewatch them, pause them if you need to, maybe take some screenshots of some parts that you just need to have saved somewhere because you're like, okay, there are some numbers there and I can't keep these numbers in mind, so I need to like write them down kind of, right? That's okay. That's part of the process. That's part of learning. Take it at your own pace and don't punish yourself for that. Okay, the next point is playtest regularly to avoid an overwhelming horde of bugs. So I'm always surprised when I hear about this, but apparently a lot of people don't playtest their games. I absolutely don't understand that. Like, anytime I add something to my game, like I finished this 1 hour and it's already something that I can go into the game and see it or interact with it or whatever I did to add to the game. I want to play it. I want to experience that. I always want to make games that I want to play, so I can't resist playing it all the time to check everything out. Like, oh my god, what does this look like? Oh my god, I really like this. Or, who do I want to change that? Oh, what could I change here? Right? And always making sure that everything works, because in the end, if you just keep working like on a script, programming, whatever, and you never really play test, at the end, you will either not even understand where all the issues lie and it's just way too overwhelming and you just like never fix the project to make it really work, or for example with micro.io you get like a list of all the stuff that's not working. Imagine just getting a list of like 100 things or more and you're just sitting there like who wants to do that then? Who wants to take care of that then? Because that's just incredibly demotivating, and it's just like you're making it worse for yourself. So really, play test. Very important. Okay, now third point, completely optional. Everything I'm saying in this video is optional. It's just recommendations. But this is something that does really help me. I love to listen to a playlist that fits the vibe of the project I'm working on. It can help to get into the right mindset in a quicker, more relaxed way. Like, for example, I'm working on this. This isn't a game. This is kind of like an ebook, I guess. I don't know if I'm ever going to publish it or if I'm just writing it for myself. I'm basically just writing it for myself. I don't know. And anytime I want to get like into the mood of writing, like I struggle a little bit, right? To really get back into the mindset of this story and this characters and this vibe. And I have this, I found this one vampire room playlist that really feels like it fits the vibe. Anytime I put that on, I just can write so fluidly and it feels so good. I really recommend this. But of course, if you really need to focus on something, pause the music, put the music away, and just let your brain completely concentrate on it if you need it at any moment, right? Okay, I really hope that this advice helps you finish your game. And if you are someone who has some advice for beginners, but also developers in general, indie developers, on things like that can help in the process of actually pushing through and making that game, finishing it, not falling into perfectionism, not falling into burnout, all of that, drop it in the comments. I really would love not just this video, but also the comment section to be a place where people who want to make games can look to get advice on this and share experiences. I would really love to see that. Distribution. This section is of course only relevant if you want to publish your game. I'm going to cover the process on itch.io because that's the site I use to publish games, so I actually know how it works and I don't want to act like I know how it is with the other sites, but it should be similar. First, you will need to create an account, which creates a page where all of your games will be sitting. Before publishing anything, I recommend adding a description, links, and imagery. Many creators use an OC or logo as the banner to represent their brand. You can adjust the background's color or make one yourself. The color and style of the writing can also be customized. Just make sure it's all readable, because there are some fonts that just look cool, but if I have to read more than one sentence with that, I'm losing interest. Okay, after setting up your page, navigate to your dashboard. Scroll down and click on Create New Project. Fill out everything needed and upload the file of your game. In your engine, there will also be the option to export a game as a file you can upload on a storefront. This is the file we need here. Make sure to not set the page to public just yet, because there's much more left to do to make the page appealing. First off, your game requires a thumbnail. This image will be shown to players scrolling through itch.io. I personally like to use an image from the game that doesn't include spoilers and use Canva to size it correctly and add the title of the game on the image. After uploading your thumbnail, you can see that below it you have the option to add screenshots. Depending on the type of your project, the screenshots you want to use can be very different. For example, my game Cosmic Bliss does not have actual screenshots, but a collection of spoiler-free artworks in a section that show the overall vibe and aesthetic of the game. I did this because the story is pretty short and every page can count as spoilers. So I decided to just go with the artworks themselves instead of blurring the text out because it looks better. I tried blurring the text out in screenshots and it just looked weird. And I was like, okay, do I blur the whole text or just certain sections? And it's like, eh. But if you made something like an RPG, I recommend adding screenshots of different scenarios, like, for example, in a town, in battle, interacting with a store, and stuff like that, to show basically the different functions, the different scenarios you have in game, the different types of gameplay. Okay, so set the page to private and just check it out. You will see that there's still much to do. Again, using Cosmic Bliss as an example, I made the background image one from the game and wrote the title in Canva and added that as a header. With one of my dress-up games, I tried out making the titles of different sections of the description as imagery instead of writing, which looks much more appealing. Like I saw that with other game pages and I was like, let me check out the pixel size of that and see if I can do something like that too, because that looks cool. I will list the pixel size I used for all of these parts on screen so you don't have to go and figure it out all by yourself. Okay, when it comes to the description, I would definitely say describe the game without spoilers, add links, and the publish or early access release date on the site as well. Of course, you can also edit the writing again, just make sure it's easy to read. So with the release date and all that kind of stuff, that's just stuff I prefer. Like I like to check out, okay, when was this game in early access? When was it fully published? And that may also be interesting to other people. And with the links, like I have my YouTube and Redbubble and my Ko-fi link and all that there, right? So people can check it out if they're interested. And with that, you should be able to end up with a nice looking game page that is appealing to players. After making the site public, the game will pop up on your page. You can choose whether it's displayed on the side or on the bottom. Something you can also do, which comes in handy after you published a few games, is to actually hide them on your page and instead show your lists. That way you can categorize your games in any way you want, so players visiting your page can easily find what they're looking for. I personally like to add informational windows on my itch.io page as well that show my followers which projects I'm currently working on. For this, I go on Canva and I make like a big writing that says in development, and then to the left there will be some imagery, and to the right I give some information about the project I'm working on. Then I save that image and I just put it below my description on my itch.io page, so followers, whenever they check out my page, they know it's not a dead page, but I'm actually actively working on something, right? Okay, now you will also be able to see the statistics of your games on your dashboard. I brought some more attention to my game by creating a dedicated social media account for my games and by talking about it on YouTube as well. But honestly, I still think most of the plays just came from people browsing these tags on itch.io. So the tags are really important. Like for example, with Cosmic Bliss, I wasn't sure if I should use the Yandere tag. But I ended up using it, Yandere, male Yandere, whatever, and it ended up bringing in so many players. Like, I'm not sure if it 100% counts as Yandere, but it definitely has that vibe, and it has this violent romance thing going on, right? So, and the reception was very positive, so I don't think anyone feels like they've been misled in any kind of way. So yeah, tags are very important, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, I hope this helps you create a cool looking game page, and I'm excited to see what you create. Okay, with this, I shared all the advice I can give at the moment, but feel free to share your advice and experiences or questions in the comment section below. This is the first time that I'm making such a long video about game development, so I'm a bit nervous about uploading this, but if I can just help one beginner out there, then I'll be happy. Okay, some afterthoughts. After writing the script and making this whole video, I was just like, I want to add a little bit of an afterthought section, just talking about stuff. And I just would like to make game development more accessible. I started uploading RPG Papermaker tutorials as a side project here because I struggled to finish an RPG myself, and I thought maybe at least I can share some of my experience. This kind of led to me also uploading free assets, and I want to do more. The reception on these videos has been so positive that I thought, wow, I can really help other devs? This is awesome. With game development, I need to manage my time very strictly. So I can't make weekly uploads, but I will continue uploading videos at least once a month. That will continue. I also want to expand to engines like Twine and RenPy. I would like this channel to be a library of tutorials and maybe more of these dev advice kind of videos for indie developers in general. And also like with future tutorials with Twine and RenPy. So the thing is, I made Cosmic Bliss, so I know my way around Twine, and I can explain, okay, how did I make Cosmic Bliss, and how can you use that information to make your game in Twine as well? What is some advice I can give? What is some scripting that I could give you that you can just copy and paste? Or with RenPy, I'm currently working on the visual novel The Reaper Project, and I have to learn a lot of stuff still. Like, I made a game with RenPy before, but for example, I'm working on this custom menu right now, and there are like 2 videos about this topic on YouTube, and I find both are quite hard to follow and skip over some parts of information that would be really important. And I also found that with some things, there is definitely an easier way to do it. So I'm figuring out how to make that in RenPy, the easiest way also to make it. And I'm going to make a video about that. And also with RPG Papermaker, I've been thinking about what do I do next, because most of the stuff I've been doing is like visual. And I thought, okay, but I also want to show more stuff when it comes to functions, when it comes to mechanics. And I'm right now working on Prismon's Side Story, which is a creature capture game. And basically, it's going to take some time until I make a video on that. But the next video is going to cover how to make a creature capture game in RPG Papermaker. This might need multiple parts, but I want to cover like how do you make them follow you, how do you make the sprites the best way, how do you make that you can capture them, how do you make how many are in battle and stuff like that. So I'm still figuring some stuff out, but when I get to a point where I feel like I have enough to talk about, that's when I'm going to make another video of that. But back to game development, I really struggled with making games before, and there were so many points at which I just felt lost and alone in this journey, and I don't want other devs to feel like this. So if you ever feel like giving up, just know that I believe in you, and I want to see what you create. I really do. Thank you so much for watching to the end. It really means a lot. I will continue uploading tutorials and stuff like that here on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe if you want more guidance in your game development journey. And of course, it would mean a lot if you check out my games on itch.io, and I also have a Ko-fi page where you can become a member or just leave a tip to show your support. Quick shout out to my first Ko-fi member, Rio Kinney. Your support means a lot and helps me continue to create content like this. If you made it this far, comment your favorite type of frog for research purposes. Okay, bye!